What's something that you would tell your younger self or a younger woman in your industry?
It's not that serious. It's going to be okay. You are resilient enough to move through whatever it is that you're facing. Only way to really move forward is to fail a little bit.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Women in Growth Marketing series. I'm Hannah Dudek, marketing specialist here at Chrometrics, and today I'm interviewing our marketing director, Samantha McClure. Thanks so much for joining us today, Samantha. And before we get started, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your career so far?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. As you mentioned, my name's Samantha McClure, and I'm the marketing director here. A little bit about me and my career. I moved to Texas right out of college and was looking around for jobs, and I found a job as a project coordinator at a medical device company. When I got in there, I had a lot of opportunity to work under executives and help with one-off projects, and I found myself working under the VP of sales, and in there noticed a lot of marketing and content. I went to school for business, and so when I got there I started to see all of these pieces that were kind of missing in the organization, and I was lucky enough to be given the freedom to start to just try things and create within the marketing space. And that eventually led me to the marketing manager position there. And that's really when my marketing career took off. I stayed there for 10 years. I moved up the kind of corporate ladder, so to speak, into building a small team. And I was the marketing director there. We did some really, really cool things, direct to patient, creating an education center. That was so fun to really build a lot of stuff from the ground up. And then from there, I moved into the agency world, and I have worked at agencies running the accounts and strategy side of things and doing a lot of the client-facing execution pieces. I ran the web development crew, the project managers and accounts team at my last agency, and then landed here at Chrometrics, where I am working with a smaller team and we are marketing the agency. So it's been quite the career. I feel like I've worked with so many different types of people, types of clients, was in, medical devices for so long, and then was able to really shift to D2C startups and then scale ups, and then worked with enterprise companies. And now being here, it's just been a really great full circle kind of career so far.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like you've kind of been everywhere all at once, And it's such a great story to tell because you did climb that corporate ladder and really started kind of from the bottom. Now you're here. Can you tell me what's a defining moment in your career that shaped who you are today?
I have my villain origin story of my marketing career. And I rarely share this because I don't know, there's no real avenue to, but I think this is really great. So when I was project manager at the medical device company, we worked with a small agency. And during that time that I was kind of seeing these areas where marketing was not as influential as it could be in the organization, I didn't know how to use Adobe Suite at all. So I actually took some courses at the community college and learned how to use Adobe InDesign and Illustrator and Photoshop. And so I was starting to jump into some of those things in that role and not create anything, but edit and make some, quick changes so we could send things to the printers quickly. And so I was just getting my feet under me as a young 20-year-old, and I was sitting in a meeting with some executives, this agency group, and myself, and I had asked a question like, could you send us the IDML file, like the InDesign file, because I had an older version of InDesign I was working from. And in front of everybody, this lady looked at me and made me feel so small and so stupid, like I had asked for the wrong thing. And I walked out of that meeting, and ever since then, I was like, I am never going to feel like that again. And what that actually did over time, as I kind of grew in my career, was make me realize that I never wanted to make anyone else feel the way that I felt. And so in that, I actually have kind of evolved, great evolution. But I started there, I was like, oh, I'm never going to feel that way. So I had to learn everything about everything. And as I've grown, I realized that you can't know everything about everything. And so it's okay to not know. And I would even say, like, a mark of a good leader to say, hey, I don't know about this. But more specifically, it crafted how I went into account management, how I ran accounts, how I wanted people to feel in my presence. And so, when I was client side at the agency, I always wanted every client to be excited for the meeting with me and my team. And if there was anything that we needed to teach or, help people understand, making sure that we did it in a way that was really inclusive and didn't make people feel like they didn't know what they were talking about. So that was like early on, and it has still stuck with me to this day. I remember her name. I will not say it. But yeah, that was a really big defining moment for me. And it was actually part of what led me into marketing and to learn more. So maybe I should thank her.
I love that you took a not so great situation and you kind of flipped it on its head to be like, well, I never want to make anyone else feel this way, so this is how I'm going to move through the world. You, instead of like internalizing that horrible feeling and making it kind of about how you feel about yourself, maybe in a negative way, you really flipped it up on its head and you were like, no, this is how I'm going to be a better human moving forward. And I think that, it's great that it shaped, your marketing career, but it's also great that it shaped who you are as a person and how you move through the world.
Totally. Yeah, I would agree.
Kind of in that same realm, have you faced any unique challenges as a woman in this field and how did you overcome them?
Similar to a lot of women in a lot of male dominated fields, I struggled a lot, specifically when I was younger, about getting my voice heard. And I specifically remember one time where I had noticed that the CRM was super outdated, and I researched all these other options and I brought three new options, my recommendation, and I was just completely dismissed. And then 3 months later, one of the male colleagues gave the same presentation of the same information and it was taken immediately. And so I think there's a lot of points in your career as a woman where, and maybe this is also just being young, where you're overlooked, where you don't have that experience. And I think it also comes down to confidence. There is a lot of times where I did not feel confident to say what I really wanted to say. And what I wanted to say was valuable in that moment. And so as I've progressed and grown as a person and gotten older, I think that overcoming a lot of the objections or a lot of dismissive things that come your way is really just about being confident and assured in yourself. And I have heard so many people say things with their whole chest that are 100% wrong. And everybody in the room is like, yeah, that sounds right. And so if you know you're right and you're not just like spewing some random thing, like if you know that you have a good viewpoint or a good strategy or a good comment, like say it with your whole chest and make people listen to you, and they will. And then the more you kind of work that confidence muscle, the more it's easier to feel good about what you're saying and feel confident in the things you're putting forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so much of how we, showcase ourselves at work really does come down to confidence. We have these hard skills that we develop, and, developing those soft skills is like a whole other world. How do you actually present the work that you're doing in a way that like comes across as, you're the expert in your field, you know what you're talking about, and like you can confidently talk about that. I think that it's so important to be able to do that. And like you said, like maybe it's the fact that you were young, maybe it's the fact that you are a woman, but still for someone to take that same information and then present it as their own is so frustrating. But to be able to kind of like spin that around and be like, well, what can I control in this situation? My own confidence. I think that that's really special.
Totally agree. Frustrating, but like we all learn and evolve from those types of situations.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of brings me to the next question, which is what's something that you would tell your younger self or a younger woman in your industry?
Yeah, I think there's two pieces of things that I would have told my younger self. I personally, and this might not be advice for everybody, I take things so seriously. And And so I would get so worked up and stressed in my own personal time about work things when I was younger. Like I would just think about and what should I have said differently, and it would hurt me so deeply. And my advice is kind of what I would give like my high school self too, is like it's not that serious, it's gonna be okay. You are resilient enough to move through whatever it is that you're facing. And even if you were let go from a job or you didn't get that promotion or whatever the thing is, everybody has been through that at some point in their life. And it's okay, working on the resilience of women. I think women are resilient just by nature and by having to be. But the more that you work on that professional resilience, I think it really is just beneficial in one, being able to compartmentalize what happens at work isn't your whole identity. And then also, just resilience in general. Not everything you say is going to be taken the way you want it to. Not everything you propose is going to be accepted. And just being able to like move through those in a positive manner will really just help stress levels as life goes on. It's okay if not everything works out. You're going to have more opportunities as life goes on.
Yeah, wouldn't it be nice if every single thing that we did, happened the exact way we imagined in our head? I think that that would be just the cherry on top of the cake, right?
If only.
If only. But unfortunately, yeah, we do have to kind of, work through that and figure out a way to, get through that uncomfortable feeling of like maybe, we failed in some area or maybe someone took something we said in the wrong way. But either way, you kind of have to move through that uncomfortable feeling and come out on the other side with a learning of some sort.
Totally.
A question that I have for you, especially since you are my manager, is how have you developed executive presence and leadership skills to establish yourself as an expert in your field?
That's a really good question. I am certainly still working on this, and I think will be a continued kind of evolution for probably my entire career. But a couple of things that I have specifically done, touched on this on an earlier question, but just confidence. I think being confident is such an executive presence kind of thing. Even if you don't know, having confidence in the questions you ask, having confidence in I don't know the answer, but I do know that I can get us to the answer. I think that confidence is such a strong piece. I think the second thing, and this is something I am still very much working on, is being okay with silence and being able to sit in discomfort. A lot of the times, I think, and maybe not, I'm not speaking for all women, but for me, I want to fix things. I want everybody to feel good, kind of from my origin story before. Like, I want to make sure everybody feels included and welcome and everything. But when you get to leadership level, there are some times when being quiet allows other perspectives and other things to come out that need to. And so that is something that I'm still really working on, is learning how to sit in an uncomfortable silence and just allowing it to be, and then figuring out the next steps from there. So I think those are two things that I'm still working on, will continue to work on. And then the third thing, and we've kind of touched on like my own personal LinkedIn journey of branding. And one of the things that I think is so important for leaders is the ability to own risk and fail publicly. And it's why a lot of people don't have big LinkedIn presences, and I don't, but like it is one of the things that holds a lot of people back, is this social media specifically. You have to fail so publicly. Like posts aren't going to do well. Like things aren't going to work out every time. You have to be vulnerable and put yourself out there. And so I think the more that leaders can show that they are, one, okay with taking risk, owning what happens of that risk, and then just being okay to fail. Like everybody fails behind closed doors. And the more that I can be an advocate for just failing publicly, I think that I would be happy with that, and keep establishing that the only way to really move forward is to fail a little bit.
Yeah, and I think everyone can kind of relate to that in some way or another is, we all fail at some point, but being able to kind of like own that. Feel like I've said this numerous times throughout this conversation, but being able to own that, move through it, learn from it, and also like it does build your confidence to fail, right? Because then you don't have the scary feeling of, am I going to fail? It's like, who cares if I do? I've done it before. Like, I'll just move through it and keep going. So I think that that's a great answer to that question.
Yeah, building that, like failing builds that resilience and trust in yourself. So it's like exposure therapy for your career. It's just like do it, fail, figure out how to build that resilience in the aftermath, and then build the trust in yourself that when you fail, you can move on and you will be successful when you move on. I think that's so powerful.
Yeah, absolutely it is. How do you see women shaping the future of growth marketing strategy in tech?
Yeah, I love this question. So I think that women are so good at relationship building and being authentic. And I think that the more that AI and tech keeps coming out with new innovations, we're going to see a shift in what that looks like, what authenticity and relationship building looks like within marketing and growth marketing. And I think that it's so cool to see how women will not only bring that strength and stand out in a world of tech and AI as people who can really connect, bring relationships and authenticity to the forefront. But the second piece is how can we be the creators behind the tech and the strategy that evolves AI and evolves automations and evolves these things to have authentic connections built into them. And so I always love when I see women who are at the forefront of creating these strategies that are built for connections. And Duolingo is a great example of that. Like all of these brands that have these cult followings are because they were able to drive a connection, whether it's a connection with a little bird, it's a connection with the brand, it's a connection with the product, with the service, with the people. It has always been about connections. And I think just the more authentic relationships, women are so good at that. And I'm excited to see what we do, in the next 20, 40 years.
Yeah, that actually brings me to another question, which is how do you build meaningful connections in an industry that's often fast-paced and data-driven?
Yeah. So one thing I really like to do is networking and like in-person co-working sessions. I can't remember if it was on this call or another call, but I do that at least once a week with a group of women locally. We go to a coffee shop. We all are in different industries or different roles, and we just work together. Sometimes it turns into a strategy session where we are, bouncing things off of each other. And sometimes we're just quiet and we're working, and you just kind of get that relationship building happening in the silence, knowing that somebody's just going to show up. So I think that's one thing that I would recommend is that was certainly stepping outside my comfort zone to do that. I would highly recommend finding women in your area who do co-working. The second thing is setting up at your own company, like co-working sessions remotely. We do that every 2 weeks. Our Women of Crow group gets together and we co-work, and sometimes we're just yapping for the whole hour, and sometimes we're, bouncing off ideas for case studies or learning what somebody's doing in a different department. And so I think there's a lot to be said about just being okay with not getting as much done and working on those relationships, because you're going to learn something about yourself, the people you're working with, the clients you're working with. You're always going to like absorb something new, even if it's not directly relevant to like what you need in this moment. It will be relevant at some point in time. And just, relationships are what get marketing done in general. And so I think that just anytime you can take a breath, make some space for connecting with people is such a valuable thing.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that, especially the part about how relationships are what makes marketing, what was it, successful? I think that that is so true. I mean, how many times have the best ideas come from just a nice yap set. And then you realize, oh, well, we could be doing this or we could be leveraging that for our internal marketing activities. And I think that so much of, I mean, marketing at its core is relationship building. It is like how do you connect with your customers and, your users or your clients or whoever, and how do you make them, want to continue having a relationship with you. So I think that that is so important to build connection throughout everything that you do in marketing.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's really interesting to see the shift to brand affinity, like the emotional connections with brands being the thing that is the thread that pulls everything kind of together. It's not just the founder story. It's not just the social media presence. It's not just the product. It's all of those things kind of coming together to allow the people to have a connection with the product or the service, and the service product company being able to understand what that connection means and also give back on that front. So it's very reciprocal versus transactional.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Last question here. What's next for you in your career and what excites you about the future?
That's a great question. This actually is like making me think. I am always so focused on like what's the next quarter bringing, that to kind of zoom out is a really interesting question. So I think for me, I am really energized by what we're creating here at Chrometrics. I think there's so much potential. We have this group of incredible clients, and our account side is just doing an incredible job over there. I am really excited with the addition of you and, having our team kind of grow in what we can accomplish. What can we do with this brand? I think we have this place where it's a perfect breeding ground for some really great success, some really great ideas. We're still nimble enough that we can try things and it's okay if we fail, and we can really do a lot of cool things. So for me, I'm really excited to see what we can create, what we can achieve in the next, year plus. And then personally working on my own brand. I think I focus so much on the companies that I've worked for throughout my career, and without letting that go, and obviously day job focusing on Chrometrics, taking a step back and focusing on my own personal brand. On the confidence side of things, I have all my ideas and, some of them come to fruition at Chrometrics, but there's so much beyond that that I want to put out in the world and find, more community that is uplifted and just create this positive environment. So you'll probably see more of me on LinkedIn, because that is one of my goals, to post 3 times a week on LinkedIn. Follow me over there to watch me fail publicly. But I'm very excited about just everything that the future holds for myself and my career and our team and the industry kind of at large.
That's a great note to end it on. Thank you so much, Samantha, for coming out and having a conversation about women in growth marketing today. It's been great talking with you, and I hope everyone at home has enjoyed, watching this conversation.
Thanks so much for having me.